The Chair recognizes the gentlelady from South Dakota, Ms. Herseth Sandlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On March 24th, Patrick Barta wrote in the Wall Street Journal that, quote, without biofuels, oil prices would be even higher, unquote, than they are now. His report cited Francisco Blanch at Merrill Lynch as observing that according to the piece, quote, oil and gasoline prices would be about 15% higher if biofuel producers weren't increasing their output, unquote, meaning oil would be priced above $115 per barrel. Do each of you agree with Blanch's analysis, yes or no, and if not, why not?
I think there's an argument there. Roughly 5% of liquid fuels is now ethanol in this country, some small amounts of biodiesel. I think there would be some impact, but I don't know that it would be 15%.
I think any amount of additional energy in the world will directionally lower prices. So more oil would lower prices, more gas would lower prices, more coal, more biofuels. So I have no doubt that it has some marginal effect. I'd be very surprised if it's as big as you suggest.
Certainly directionally, I would agree. That's why we need all forms of energy.
And I would agree.
I would just point out, I think you've got to look at the cost associated with producing biofuels versus gasoline out of crude. You look at $5 a barrel or $5 per bushel corn price today and $100 per barrel crude. The production cost of biofuels is about $3.15 a gallon, and out of crude is $2.70. So it's hard for me to see how that would have a positive impact in terms of the price of gasoline that people pay in terms of the biofuel effect.
So you don't agree, Mr. Simon, that it has any impact whatsoever in light of what you claim to be the production costs of corn ethanol today?
I think we've got to be careful if you think you're lowering the price that the consumer pays at the pump by mandating a higher cost liquid fuel that goes into producing.
Right. I understand you probably have been opposed to the renewable fuels standard, either the one that we included in the 2005 Act or even the one that we recently passed. Is that correct, Mr. Simon?
Our corporation does not think that mandates and subsidies is the right approach.
What is the percentage of ethanol that ExxonMobil blends in U.S. gasoline today?
Today we blend about 8%.
8%, and so you would be blending that even if there wasn't a renewable fuel standard?
No, that's not correct. I think if there were not a renewables fuel standard, it would be lower than that.
And do any of your companies support higher ethanol blends beyond E10 in light of recent studies that suggest a blend of 20% and even 30% ethanol increase fuel efficiency and do not pose any types of damage, corrosive damage to the vehicles as some have suggested?
Well, to start with, we're working in California to get the limit raised from 5.7%, which is today's limit in California because of environmental restrictions, to 10%. So that's the first place we got to go. I do believe that going over 10% in the nation would stretch the food system to the point that you don't want to go any further. So we have to be working on second generation ethanol from cellulosic conversion, and we're working as hard as we know how to generate that kind of technology and produce that kind of stuff. So going beyond 10% across the country would not work in today's environment.
You mentioned the impact on food prices, and I think that there was perhaps some suggestion of this, Mr. Simon, in a comment you made in your opening statement about developing alternative fuels and leading to unintended consequences. Okay. Do any of you have any independent analysis that you can share with the committee that it has been the cost of the price per bushel of corn or wheat that has directly led to the increase in food prices and what percentage that constitutes versus energy costs associated with processing or transporting the food?
I do not, that I'm aware of.
None of you have any independent analysis to make that claim?
I think there's been independent studies done in that regard, but we certainly don't have it.
Okay. But you're citing, but you tend to cite the...
there's no doubt I believe, based on all that I've read from lots of different places, that the price of food has been impacted by the requirement to turn a lot of corn into ethanol.
And would you also agree with the statement, though, that the price of food is also affected by increased energy costs?
Sure.
But you haven't done any independent analysis that would break down the percentages associated with energy versus other commodities?
I have not.
Okay. Well, my time's up, so I'll yield the remainder of my time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Oh, one last question. Are any of the other 4 companies other than ConocoPhillips test marketing E85 or biodiesel?
Yes, Shell has a test market in Chicago where we're looking at consumer acceptance of the product.
We've got a test going with the state of California with several hundred vehicles that are running on E85, and we sell E85 at a very small number of our service stations around the country.
Right, Jen?
We have E85 only about 30 service stations.
We have limited E85. We're waiting on some pump approvals, but we do have it under the canopy now.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New York State, Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.